Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Talking City podcast. I'm Tyrone Marshall, hosting today, being joined by Simon Bajkowski, who is actually sat right next to me. For those of you that are watching it, we are at the CFA, head of the Real Madrid press conference a little later on Monday. So it's Monday morning at the moment. We'll be speaking to Pep soon. But Si, first of all, good to see you in person. And how are you?
Yeah, it's very cosy, this, isn't it? I'm quite tired. Quite tired. Long Saturday, long Sunday. And it's going to be a long Monday, but we should enjoy it while we can.
Joys of the job, mate. The thrills of the job. I won't ask why it was a long Sunday, since that was your day off. There might be some secrets we don't want revealing in there, but it did sound like you were on a very early train on Saturday morning.
Yeah, 5:55 down. Although a colleague caught the 6 a.m. from Crewe, and I enjoyed my train getting into Crewe at 6:30 and only getting into Euston 10 minutes after his. So, like a little win. His journey was slightly worse than mine.
Yeah.
So, but enjoyable trip to Brisbane Road. It was good old-fashioned cup tie.
Absolutely, yeah. You take everyone you can get at 5:55 in the morning as well. And it was a good old-fashioned cup tie. It was one of those classic cup ties where, you see these pampered people used to Premier League facilities, used to kind of living the high life in the Premier League, especially at City, where we know that the standards and the facilities are so great, and then suddenly it's the muck and nettles of League One and Brisbane Road. So how did you find Brisbane Road?
I enjoyed it. I was there was only room for one of us in the press box, which was unfortunate. But then when I got there, they'd let 2 people in from other organisations, but only given them 1 chair.
And not told them?
Not told them, no. So I sort of think it was better to go alone than to get there and fight over the chair. And also really weird, because we're on the gantry, but it's a really low stadium. Like, all the fans are really low down, and there's apartment blocks in every corner. Like, people who can actually see the game. It was brilliant, but everyone's really low down, and then we were sort of right in the gods with a net as well. So it was a strange experience. One of the more surreal settings for a Guardiola press conference in his 9 years. It was sort of like an academy classroom, which they're like rules as you walked in for how to be a model student. And one of the rules was no something heads.
Oh yes, famous, made famous by the All Blacks,
as it is. Yes. So yeah, it was a colourful trip.
It sounds
and a great game.
Yeah, it was a very entertaining game. It's a proper lower league stadium, isn't it? I've never done a game there, but I've been watching Shrewsbury there years ago several times, and it was always a good trip. And those apartments in the corner are great and worth their weight in gold, I imagine.
Apparently one of them an Airbnb.
Oh, is it? You rent for the game? Yeah. Fantastic. I bet they were doing a good business this weekend.
Probably like 5 times the rate.
Absolutely, at least. And like you say, it was a great game. I mean, City avoided the shock, and in the end, it's turned into a weekend where quite a few Premier League teams and big Premier League teams struggled at lower league stadiums, and City certainly did struggle, but they got there in the end, didn't they, by hook or by crook?
I mean, this season has been sort of like, since October and November started, it's been like, how do we judge City? Who do we judge them against? And it's like, they played PSG in January. Right. Not great. Not good enough to be at that level. Then they played Chelsea. Okay. Right. Top 4. Beat Chelsea. Played Arsenal. Oh, my God. No. And then they go to Leyton Orient, and they've got 3 of the 4 new signings in the team. This 50 million midfielder who Pep said is here to play Rodri's role for the rest of the season. And, it all goes wrong. And it's just like, this team are not at Leyton Orient's level, which is a bit of a worry when your next game is Real Madrid and you're playing a team in the 3rd division. It was a much changed team. There were 8 changes from the Arsenal defeat. But, that team who was on the pitch really, really struggled. And a horrific debut for Nico Gonzalez.
Yeah, well, let's start there, given City went 1-0 down. I mean, he was caught on the ball for the goal and got injured, I think, in being caught on the ball for the goal and had to go off. It was a phenomenal goal, even though it was an own goal. And I mean, you probably didn't see it, but And on the TV after the match, they interviewed the goal scorer straight afterwards.
Yeah.
And like the first question was like, great strike, but shame about it being an own goal. Like, and he was like, oh, I didn't know it was an own goal. And it just felt like the most brutal. I mean, he deserves that goal. And it was brutal on telly. He basically said, well, it wasn't your goal, but nice try. And he was like, oh,
it does, but at the same time, it's the clearest own goal that has ever been. And like, I feel like there are so much tribalism and arguing in football, and like trying to say, oh, well, that should never be an own goal. It's like this
wasn't going in.
Like, pick your battles. Like, yeah, it's not woke nonsense that the ball hits a goalkeeper and goes in, and it's, you know, hitting the crossbar is technically not a shot on target. So he's in goal.
Great effort.
No one will remember that it was Ortega on goal.
No.
You know, City wanted a foul for the issue with Gonzalez. I don't think it was. I think he just got brushed off the ball. You know, Pep said afterwards it was like, welcome to England. VAR might have changed it, might have given a foul. It would have been soft. It would have been given as a foul. City would have been fuming if, you know, they'd scored that goal and it had been disallowed. So, but it just lit up the whole stadium. And Leyton Orient had a few goals before then and got in behind City's right side with Lewis and Heish. So, you know, it wasn't like a fluke, but it was a brilliant goal.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, you mentioned Gonzalez's nightmare debut there. I mean, it seems to be a recurring theme. At least Kusanov lasted long enough to kind of get some redemption on against Chelsea on his debut. Gonzalez didn't. Are we judging his debut harshly because he was caught on the ball, or were there things before that where it seemed a bit?
No, I mean, he played a lovely ball into the box for Savinho that Savinho squared, and Gundogan somehow managed to not tap it into an empty net. So there were some nice things, but it's just one of those things like you would say you couldn't write it, but you could write City scripts this season, because every time they look like they take one step forward, it's like at least one step back. And like I say, Gonzalez got bullied off the ball for the goal, and then that's his game over. No chance to redeem himself. And it was, difficult for him. And City seem to get into this position where they're like, well, Gundogan doesn't need to be the sixth today. He doesn't particularly like being the sixth. He's not particularly great at being the sixth. And finally, he doesn't need to be the sixth. And then invariably he ends up being the sixth. Like, they just can't get away from that. It was like when they couldn't get away from having to play Kyle Walker earlier in the season. It's like suddenly it's gone wrong, and they're not great this season at getting out of situations when it's gone wrong.
No, definitely not. And I mean, they did turn the game round in the second half. There was obviously a lot of luck with the first goal, but, you know, I mean, as you would expect, that they created a lot of chances, didn't they? They had the way to the chances, and I mean, they do deserve credit for turning it around. It was a lovely, as much as the first goal was a bit of good fortune, the second goal was a lovely goal, and they did deserve to win the game in the end.
They did. I think Stones was critical. Stones is just such a calming influence and so good on the ball. And Grealish was terrific as well. He sort of really turned it on in the second half. And yeah, I mean, they had to bring on Foden and De Bruyne to win the game. It sort of says a lot. I think they would have brought on Haaland if they could. Like, they gave Haaland the day off, but it was an afternoon that cried out for Haaland, because Marmoush was... He was lively again, but it just wasn't quite falling for him. And I mean, he must have wondered how he's gone from sort of banging in goals in the Bundesliga every week to this. So it was a full-blooded effort from Leyton Orient. And the other thing as well is that what City have done this season, which is really peculiar, is that whenever they score, whoever they score against, it automatically gives the opponents a lift. So they score, and then Leyton Orient were like, right, let's go and get another and get back in front now. And it's like, what? It should boost City, but it works the opposite way this season.
Well, this is the thing I was going to mention, that City created, it was just a really, really watchable game, and City created a lot of chances. But it's kind of the pattern of a lot of their games recently that they conceded a lot of chances as well to a League One team. And, you know, it was a very nervy final few minutes, wasn't it? You know, Leyton Orient. The whole game, really. There were times when Orient were pinned back, conceding a lot of chances, but you always felt they were a danger. And so it proved in the last minute when they could have very easily taken that tie to extra time.
Yeah. And Ortega is a very good shot stopper, but there were times where it felt like the saves were more dramatic than they needed to be, and it was like putting things out for a corner rather than catching the ball, and you were kind of like, this is just all adding to pressure. But same again, it went to 1-1 and Leyton Orient had the better chance, and then it went to 2-1 and Leyton Orient had the better chances. So City deserve credit for getting through it, and like you say, the result looks a lot better after the weekend. But we're at that point again of like, where are City right now? Well, they're a team that's struggling to beat Leyton Orient.
Yeah, I mean, it should be said that they've kind of had some of these cup ties before, haven't they? I mean, I know they did a number on Salisbury previously, but you think back to Cheltenham, they found it pretty tough. They were losing. I think even Newport, the game they won 4-1. I think it was still 1-1 or 2-1 quite late on.
Yeah, Swansea, they were 2-0
Swansea, that's it. The other one, they were 2-0 down. So they have had these games previously against lower league opposition where they find it difficult. And I guess it is, it's part of the cliche of the FA Cup, but it's pretty, Plymouth did a number on Liverpool yesterday. Birmingham shut the game to Newcastle. It does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's absolute credit to City. I think it's 18 games in a row they have beaten lower league opposition in the FA Cup, which is a record for a top flight team. And City made a load of changes, won the game. Liverpool made a load of changes, lost the game. And it is why City have won so many trophies, because they take every game so seriously. And I think you can excuse some of the performance because of the new signings, because they didn't really look like, they looked hesitant passing to each other. They looked like they weren't sure of what to do, and the new signings won't fully be used to it. But it was still a game that sort of Leyton Orient came out with far more credit than City did.
Definitely. And is there anyone who can look back on it and think they might have changed the narrative of the season then, or for who it was a good day? You mentioned Grealish before. It feels like he's the obvious one.
Guardiola was really interesting on Grealish afterwards. Talking about him being a street footballer and how, most players in the game are academic and just do whatever the manager tells them to do, whereas Grealish is a street footballer, and that's what makes him special. And he was like, is the argument that everyone's been, everyone said Pepper's stopped him being a street footballer. Yeah. So the follow-up was like, well then. And he was like, no, I've always wanted it. I want more of it. I just haven't seen it enough for the last 2 years. And like, people responding to me this morning when I put the comments out saying like, Pep's put him in a straitjacket. It's like, well, did he put him in a straitjacket when they won the treble? No. Well, if he didn't do it then, why would he have done it any other season?
Yeah.
It's in Grealish's hands. But, how well that street footballer comment goes down with Grealish, we won't know. But, he said, I saw today, he thought I'd be a rebel, I'm going to prove him wrong. And that's what he wants. And he wants that fighting spirit. And I don't think we've seen enough fight from Grealish. And it's hard when he's on the pitch because that's kind of not his job. But just because you have like some specific things that you have to do in the team doesn't mean you can't take the game to the opposition. And he's not done that enough. That's
probably where he's kind of struggled with the balance, hasn't he? And in a way, it does feel like he's been asked to do the balance job that you don't really see with Doku, and that was always the big comparison. But Grealish came in, and in that treble season, he was great in that treble season. Yeah. But he was a controlling winger a lot of the time, wasn't he? He would take a few extra touches.
He was.
He's found it maybe difficult to balance when to do that. Is when to be that street football.
But no one's telling him to be Doku. Well, they're just saying, if you can chip the ball through to Kevin De Bruyne and to score, do it. Yeah. Don't pass it sideways or backwards. And like,
I guess
you say with Doku, like, Doku's issue we've raised before, and got called racist for, like, he doesn't find Haaland.
Yeah.
He's got one assist for Haaland, which he got a few weeks ago. Like, if you are that kind of winger, you have to serve your striker.
Yeah.
Like, Grealish has to serve his forwards. His game may be about keeping possession, but it's also about creating chances at the right time and spotting opportunities that no one else spots. And that's what makes him, that special player. And we've not seen it. It's been too safe.
Yeah, to finish on Grealish, I guess it is about finding that balance. Like you said, then if you could chip the ball through to De Bruyne, do it. But when you're also coached in control at certain times, if you try that ball to De Bruyne and it doesn't come off, is it in the back of your head thinking, I'm going to get a rollicking for that, I should have played the extra pass? And he is, Guardiola's right, he is a street footballer, he's a maverick, he's at his best when he is kind of freewheeling, and I guess he's got to find that comfort in the team, hasn't he, that to know when to do both, and to know that if he does try that ambitious ball and it doesn't come off, it's not a disaster, when it kind of feels recently like he's been playing. He doesn't want to play that ball if it's not a, if he feels it's too risky, he won't play it, and he probably needs to change that approach.
By the end of the day, there are plenty of players in the squad who will play that ball and not care if it doesn't find the right man. So if Grealish is worried about that, then he won't play, because others will play because they've got a better mentality for that. So
let's hope he's listening.
Yeah.
Right, that's all for the first part. We'll be back after the break to look ahead to a big game on Tuesday night. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. So from Leyton Orient to Real Madrid, just a standard week in City season. I don't know if any Real Madrid scouts were near you on that gantry at Brisbane Road, but if they were, Si, what will the report back to Carlo Ancelotti be for Tuesday night?
I feel like everyone who hasn't watched City this season is in amazement when they see them live. We'll see them on the telly. Like when we were in Paris, every PSG fan, every PSG journalist was like, we're going to get battered. We're not playing well, and it's City. And then they saw the game and they were like, oh my God. And even Saturday, people seeing Leyton Orient and being like, yeah, City just like, they're really open, and like, what's going on? There's Real Madrid have got some injured players, and they're not in their best form. I'm seeing, a headline this morning being like, oh, City are still more vulnerable than injury hit Real Madrid, and you're like, yeah, of course they're more vulnerable. Yeah. And I don't know whether I said it on the podcast, but I kind of thought the first leg being at home might mean that City you'd normally want the second leg at home, but thinking if City can have the first leg at home and get that confidence and take something to Real Madrid, then maybe they can pull off a result. But, I watched them at Arsenal and I thought, well, it don't matter if they beat them 5-0 at home. They're still more than capable of going out, because they can concede 3, 4, 5 goals in no time at all in any situation. Real firm favourites.
Yeah, and you're right, that it is two teams with their own problems, although Real are 1 point or 2 points off top, I think, in La Liga. It's a very close title race there. And, let's look at the team list first. Obviously, we're speaking here before the press conference, so we'll get an update on a few issues. But to say, first of all, the defensive subs, centre-back change at the weekend was pre-planned, basically. There's no injury concerns there.
No.
So City have got options in defence for the first time in a long time, it feels like. And Real Madrid haven't got any centre-backs. So, that should be an encouragement, shouldn't it? And what does City do at centre-back? Is it going to be Diaz and Stones?
I think you go for Diaz and Stones, and you play a Kanji as well, and you actually have sort of a right-back, really, in one of them. And you play Guardiola, and you have, a better back four than you've had pretty much all season. That is the plan as long as the fitness has held, basically. Stones played 45, Diaz played 45. You don't want either of them to break down again, but, Guardiola said on Saturday, Stones has now played 3 games with no pain in his feet that he's had for a long time, so that is positive. Ederson did train last week. Whether he's back or not, I think he'd be more confident with Ederson in the team than Ortega, and certainly Ortega in this particular moment for him. But yeah, the back four has to be positive, and the fact that Haaland's not playing against Rudiger must be positive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels a question of, can City take advantage of that Real Madrid defence not being at its strongest, and they probably can. But City have played Real a lot recently, and some of these games, even when City have been at their controlling best, have been absolutely wild. You watch City against the League One team, a mid-table League One team on Saturday, and they can't even control that. It kind of feels like it's whatever happens tomorrow, it could be absolutely wild, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I've been particularly critical of him in recent weeks, but seeing Mateo Kovacic has been rested for Leyton Orient to keep him fresh for Real Madrid, you think, oh, well, Kovacic has cost City at least one goal in the last 2 games he's played or whatever. So that isn't necessarily the show of strength that it might otherwise be seen as, for Kovacic to be one of your key players, because he's a squad player. Like, he's not someone who you would want starting against Real Madrid. Do you throw Nico Gonzalez in, who's had a bruising debut in every sense of the word? Does Jusao Kusnov had a decent second half? Do you throw him in? Does Marmoush play? Because Marmoush has kind of seems to have brought a bit more control and order to the City team, but at the same time he's played 3 and not done that much. So there's still a lot of questions, for a lot of decisions that Guardiola needs to get every one of them to go right for them to be where they want to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nico Gonzalez there. Obviously, he again, I'll re-emphasise, we're talking before the press conference, but I think Guardiola said it was a kick at the weekend, and obviously we saw basically it landed on during the goal. So hopefully it's not too serious. I mean, does City need him to be fit in that midfield? It feels like if you play that midfield of Kovacic and Gundogan, the way it's been going recently, and the speed at which Real can attack, if you imagine Vinicius, Rodrigo, Mbappe, and Bellingham kind of trying to pick the ball up around Kovacic and Gundogan, I mean, this could be frightening, isn't it? I mean, it's making me want to climb under this table just thinking about that. I mean, do they need Nico Gonzalez in the team?
Well, that's it. I mean, like, if you don't play him, then it's either Kovacic or Gundogan or both. And recent performances would suggest that's the recipe for getting beat.
Yeah.
But, is Gonzalez ready to step in? And, that's exactly what they don't want it to be, Gonzalez coming in and expecting him to be the saviour of the whole team. Like Rodri played against Real Madrid last year and still lost. So it's difficult. And, whatever the team is, you're going to look at it and you're going to think, oh, Real Madrid can have some joy here.
I guess. I mean, the one area they have got strength in, and in a way, why they're going to have to go toe-to-toe and turn it into the type of game that you feel like it could finish 7-5 on aggregate or something like that, is that they've got strength in attack. We know Haaland's going to start. Beyond that, you've got Savinho, Marmoush, De Bruyne, Foden, Grealish. I mean, how do you see that attack lining up? And do City have to kind of play as many of them as possible in a way, just to fight fire with fire and turn it into these? There's been so many of these games recently that you look at them and they're not games that Guardiola wants, are they? They're not how he wants his team to play.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they've got no option at the moment. And do they have to kind of just fight fire with fire against Real and play as many of them as they can in a way?
Yeah, it's one of those things where recently, like, the transition game that Guardiola says they're no good at has been the best way for them.
Yeah.
With you would think that De Bruyne would play, having not started the last few games. Quite possibly Foden as well, and then Marmoush. Savinho's been good. So you kind of think they might have to be sort of like an all-out attack to take the game to Real and see what Real do, because Real is still a team that aren't used to being put under pressure by a high-quality attack like that, and they will have some baggage from the Etihads from 2023 that they didn't necessarily exercise last year with the penalty shootout win, because they sort of spent it all defending. So I think it's a hit and hope for City, and the best chance of hitting is that direct attack.
Yeah, and it's I mean, the fact is they're playing in this playoff round because both teams made a mess of the league phase. Let's be honest about it. Real, we've kind of touched anyway, but City are in this stage when they shouldn't be. But some are Real Madrid. Real Madrid cruised to top 8 and didn't, because they had a horrible start. I think they won their last 3 to get in the end. I think at one point they were probably below City in the league phase.
Yeah.
So there are reasons both are at this stage of the competition. I mean, it's probably an absolute nightmare for UEFA, isn't it? In a way, it's a great game to watch at this stage of the season.
Yeah.
But it's not really what they envisaged, is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because at least they will kind of it makes the playoff round go over 8. And they still get their big tie over 2 legs. So let's not get too many violins out for UEFA.
No.
But no, it is, City and Real have been the 2 best teams in Europe for the last 4 years. And one of them won't be in the Champions League last 16.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a surprise. Not a surprise in the sense that I don't think either of them have been anywhere near the best 2 teams in Europe this season, but maybe that is what the new format has brought, that sort of you're not, although you are protected and that you get a playoff, it's probably against someone else.
Yeah.
So it's not worked out that they've been protected that way, but yeah, it's a big ask.
It is a big ask, and you're right to say neither has been amongst the best teams in Europe this season, but whoever gets through to the last 16 will be second, third, fourth favourites. Absolute worst case scenario. There'll still be an expectation that whoever gets through can potentially reach the final and win it.
There will be, although I think I'm right in saying they will be drawn against Real or Atletico or Leverkusen, and I don't think either of them difficult. I think both of them would struggle to beat Atletico over 2 legs, certainly. So
yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe in a way, Atletico, kind of the way they play, maybe would suit City in a weird sort of way.
Really, really hard though. A few years ago when they played them, it took so much out. And Real really struggled against them on Saturday night. So it's. I think their reputation is a lot more than sort of the sum of parts of the team at the minute.
Yeah. You said they're one of these teams is going out. I won't put you exactly on the spot and say which one's going out, but if it's City to go through, what is their path to beating Real Madrid? How do they go about it?
Haaland.
And
Jones and Diaz.
Outscore them, or look to make it sort of a 2-0 and a 1-0?
Well, I think, that they've got a chance of making the defence kind of more secure than it has been. But yeah, they just need their main man to do what he's not done in the last few years and score against Real to sort of give them the lead, and then they need to do everything they can to hold on.
Yeah, he's got a point to prove against Real.
I think also what you touched on with City's attack, I think they maybe have to do that, because I think they've come into some of these games like Chelsea was like 3 centre-backs, 6 centre-mids and Haaland. It's like, I think because they've been so weak in the middle, Guardiola tried to pack the midfield with players, and I'm not sure that sort of defensiveness plays into their hands. Yeah. I think they need to think we are still one of the best teams in the world. We have to go for it.
Just accept a weakness and throw an extra attacker on. And
concentrate on your strength rather than your weakness or anyone else's weakness.
And their strength is in attack at the moment here, with the players that got fit and Blaze finding form. So either way, I think it's going to be an incredible couple of games. I think tomorrow night could be absolutely anything, the way City games have been going recently. That's all for now. Thanks for joining us, Si. Please do leave a like and a review and subscribe and all of that usual jazz. Hope you've enjoyed this in-person podcast, and we'll be back later in the week to review whatever happens at the Etihad and look ahead to the weekend. But for now, that's everything. Thanks for listening, and speak to you soon.